Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very, very exciting discussion because it's not often we get to discuss a Christopher Nolan movie on our channels. But with the introduction of Fellowship of Fandoms under the Fellowship of Fans umbrella, we are now able to do so. So, if you guys can, if you're interested, like and follow that channel. It greatly helps our new initiatives into diving into all things nerdy. Jess, when you saw it in 70 millimeter, right?
Did. Yes, I am so blessed to live in a city that has one of the very few IMAX 70 millimeters in the US. So I went on my own little odyssey about a year ago to get these tickets, which sold out so fast. But I managed to snag a couple, and we saw it on Thursday night, and it was unbelievable. I mean, it's the first movie that's ever been solely shot for IMAX in 70 millimeter. So like recently, seen Project Hail Mary, which switched aspect ratios throughout to great narrative effect, I might add. And Sinners as well did the same thing, but this one was all in the IMAX aspect ratio, which was insane. So it was amazing. The sound was amazing. They're kind of sprucing up the IMAX theaters for this movie specifically, and you could tell. I mean, it was an experience. Anyone who can should see that. I'm sure it'll come back around. They'll bring it back closer to awards season. But yeah, it was an immediate 5 stars for me. I've always loved Nolan. I love Greek mythology and the classics, which we'll get into more later. So yeah, just an amazing experience I'm still digesting several days later.
And as this movie was rolling out, there was a lot of promotion for IMAX and its technology. And Adam Savage had a kind of a background video on his channel showing the IMAX reels, and they're literally the size of a person. They are massive. I think he said something like it was like 300 pounds or something like that. It's insane.
Yeah, like I think 287 pounds or something. They do this little spiel before the IMAX showing. One of the workers does, so they tell you all about it. And yeah, they have to use like a forklift to move it around. It's crazy.
Now moving on to Harry, what was your just gut reaction coming out of the theater? Like, how did you feel about this Odyssey?
Yeah, so I was, of course, quite upset to not be able to get to watch it in 70 millimeter IMAX, but I don't feel like I didn't miss much. I did get to watch Oppenheimer in LA, which was, a crazy experience. But yeah, coming out of it, I feel like nowadays, with movies coming out, you don't get to feel that sense of epic, and I feel like I came out of this, and just because of the realism, and Christopher Nolan spoke about it, where there's a difference between how he would show the gods, whether it be physical or if you CGI, but everything felt so real. For example, the Cyclops, etc., etc. But everything felt so grounded, and that made it feel like even more epic. And I feel like in the second act, there was a little bit with the pacing I had, but the payoff in the final act, when, we get back to his home, I felt like was all definitely worth it. And yes, it was coming out of that, and especially the third act, I was like, yeah, overall, really, really enjoyed it. 5 stars as well. And that's why I'm, so excited to talk about it.
Well said. Yeah, for me, coming out of the theater, I was definitely blown away. There was times where I was literally on the edge of my seat, like, my God, how are they going to get out of this? And yeah, it was kind of like a culmination of a lot of Nolan's previous work in this film. Like, you can see hints of Oppenheimer, hints of The Prestige, hints of Dunkirk,
Tenet.
even. Dare I forget Tenet?
And Interstellar. Yeah, it's definitely, that's a perfect way to put it. It feels like the culmination of his entire filmography up to this point was making this movie.
First impressions and the experience. So we got a high level from everyone, but now we'll dive into a couple of metrics to see how this pans out for, the average watcher. If you were to bring a date on this movie, do you think they would enjoy it? General appeal, which is just if you're someone not into Greek mythology in this case, would you like this movie? And the first category that we're going to discuss is the ride, which is dealing with pacing. So without further ado, let's move to the ride. So in the ride, Harry kind of alluded to it a bit. So maybe we'll start with you, Harry. How well did the movie manage its pacing? Did it keep you on the edge of the seat, or did it drag at times?
It's a consistent thing, I think, with Christopher Nolan, with all his, amazing, attributes he brings to filmmaking and directing films. One of the things sometimes is, the pacing. But I don't feel like this film in the end did have that issue because of the payoff in the third act. I think going into it, the first half an hour to an hour, getting a lot of the flashbacks, seeing, a lot of Odysseus, why he ended up on the island, recollecting his memories. It was all very well done. And then I feel like once we shift into more the second act, when we see him going from island to island, and then of course, no spoilers, we start to realize the payoff for that is the big twist near the end, which we find out. I think it was good. I feel like at times maybe when going from island to island, they could have maybe shortened it a little bit. But it wasn't something like major, like that's like a nitpicking thing at best. And then once, of course, if you've seen, this is not really a spoiler because it's been out for like 3,000 years. But when Odysseus, does make it back home, then it really starts to pick up again. And I feel like it would be even cool to see even more of this, the court politics. Maybe if Nolan could have added a bit more of that into there and seeing how that unfolded. But yeah, I think my baseline take on it is the pacing ended up being fine because the payoff was that good, and that's where I stand on it.
Yeah, I thought the ride was absolutely thrilling. I mean, it's a little bit less than 3-hour movie, and it feels like shorter. I mean, it's like Harry said, the first couple acts are slower than the third because he goes absolutely crazy style in the third. That doesn't mean the first 2 acts are slow. I think that Nolan really flexes his ability to use a non-linear storyline here in a way that, I think is the best that he's done, because the non-linear way in which he tells it makes a couple emotional payoffs at the end and twists hit so much harder in a way that just I feel like for sometimes people say Nolan is not the best with emotion or anything like that. Not here. He's killing it. I mean, just to where I'm full on sobbing in the theater at some of these things. The reveals were so exceptional. And I think it interwove the stories of the main characters in a way that really kind of mirrors the way that those stories are interwoven in the poem, from Odysseus and Penelope and Telemachus, all kind of making their way back to each other. So yeah, really, really great pacing, really exceptional editing work here from, I think, his longtime collaborator. I think her name is Jennifer. It's spelled lame. She was not lame at all. Amazing. I think editing for this movie might be getting some awards because it's just so good. There's maybe one sequence. I think that, we'll get into this more later. There's maybe one sequence I feel could have been cut only because it's retreading the Cyclops sequence in a way. But I think that Nolan, the sequences he did keep are because they play into the central theme of not only what Nolan is doing, but also the poem of the Odyssey itself. So other than that, I think he cut what was not contributing to his central thesis and left what needed to be in there.
Awesome. I feel like with good pacing, a film does that where you have your ups and downs. So there was some dips in the story, but it helped with the, I guess you could say the final drop of the roller coaster. A lot of build up to something. The Odyssey went by in a blink of an eye, just like Oppenheimer, which was around the same runtime, more or less. Those movies flew by. All right, so now we're going to move into the next category, which kind of decides who applies to this movie, who should go see this. So general appeal, we can think of movies, trying to think of one that's very artsy and you need to have a lot of knowledge of the background to fully enjoy it. But for the general appeal score, it's more so just who's the target audience? Is it broad enough? Does it have universal appeal? Or is it a niche film for a specific crowd? I was curious. I was wondering it's a Greek mythology. Should I have paid attention more in history class to understand the story? But in Nolan fashion, he can take complex ideas and make them digestible enough, and he puts the trust in the audience to come along for the journey. So overall, It was very accessible. The moral of the story or the messages he wants to get across are very universal. You don't need to be a Greek historian to get those. So yeah, that's kind of where I land on that. How about you, Jess?
Yeah, I would say this one, I mean, if you're a fan of Christopher Nolan in general, you're going to love this movie. If you're interested in seeing a master working at the height of their craft, you're going to want to see this movie. If you're into cinema and you want to see something new, something filmed entirely for IMAX, filmed entirely on location, mostly practically, I mean, you're gonna be interested. If you are a fan of any of the major stars who are a part of this film, you would probably go see this movie. And yeah, there's people who love Greek mythology. There's a lot of contemporary interpretations and retellings that are very popular these days. This is an adaptation, which in and of itself is an interpretation of a text. All translations are interpretations of a Greek text. So I think that anyone interested in adaptation as a medium would also do well to go see this movie, because it's an excellent one. Yeah, the themes, like you said, digestible, extremely timely. The central thesis of this poem is kind of unchanged from what its original form was thousands of years ago, and it's extremely relevant to our society today. So yeah, can't recommend it enough. I think it's going to be doing big numbers, as it already is.
I think there's one like clear reason why it has a general appeal, and why Christopher Nolan was trying to target a broader audience and not keep it niche. I think it's because of the dialogue. I think if you listen to them speak throughout the film, I think if he was trying to keep it more, not gatekeepy, but like keep it to like a more high level of, people having to understand, the old language, more references. But no, I think, some of the lines that people remember the most is, I think, when Odysseus is on like the beach, says, "Has been here 10 effing years, let's go home," something, stuff like that. And that's literally the most,
which is so good.
Yeah, exactly. It's not some, close intimate scene where, he's speaking in old Greek, not old Greek, but like, old English style, and then, referencing something from the Iliad. It's stuff, moments like that. And that's what appeals to general audiences the most.
I just looked up because Harry mentioned the F-bomb dropped in the script. I was like, oh, was this PG-13 or R? And I looked, it's R. And I'm like, this thing, I mean, there's a lot of violence. Okay, maybe that's why I got its R, but I feel like it could have squeaked by with a one F-bomb drop, but yeah,
I think
whatever.
It could have easily been, lower. with the ratings, you can say, I think they're from once. And then it only did come up once in the film. So yeah, maybe that's Nolan's decision.
It's probably more the violence. I think the amount of blood and direct violence shown on screen, and maybe even that he didn't want to limit himself by trying to get it to PG-13. So he was like, let me just make it, and it can be R if it needs to be, and then we'll see what happens once the film is like done being edited, see what rating it gets. Yeah, because there was only one F-bomb, so I thought it was R,
Yeah.
and then there was one F-bomb, and I was like, did they make it PG-13? But no, I didn't end up looking up what it ended up being, so it was R.
So parental guidance suggested. So keep that in mind for the general appeal. Awesome.
One thing I will say, though, at least you can watch this film basically with your parents, because I remember with Oppenheimer, that scene that came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It was with the Odyssey had the same thing, but it wasn't really.
Yeah. For the most part, it seems like violence was like the major contributor, I'd say, to the R. Let's see here. I think we're basically tiptoeing into spoiler territory. So the last question I can possibly ask before we're in that realm is the legacy of this film. I think a fun way to do this, because we are talking about Christopher Nolan, this is a dangerous question. Where does this movie rank currently in your mind for the Nolan films? And I'll word it like that because I feel like after rewatching, things might shift. So right now in your mind, where does this fall?
Honestly, I went and immediately added this to my top 4 on Letterboxd, which, previously I would have said that Interstellar was my favorite of Nolan's films, although I don't necessarily think it's his best. But I think that the way that this film brings together the best of his craft that he's like showed in all the other movies, the best of his storytelling. I think it's really like exemplified in this movie. And it's just like so ambitious no one's done like the Odyssey. You know, they did Troy, which whatever, we won't get into that. But to do the Odyssey, like it hasn't really been done before. And I think it makes so much sense when you look at the last few movies he's done. But yeah, I think this immediately leaps to the top of my favorite Nolan films, favorite films of all time, best of the year, which people are just going to be like, you're just like a Nolan fanboy. And it's like, well, yeah, I am. But also I'm a classicist. I studied Latin and Greek. I have a degree in classics. I've translated much of the Odyssey from the Greek. I have about 7 different translations on my shelf behind me. So I'm not just a Nolan fanboy. I would say like I'm a fan of the poem in all of its forms, and I can appreciate different adaptations and translations. And I think that this one was super successful.
Wow. So you're coming with receipts, it sounds like.
A few.
So in summary, you think that this is top Nolan? This is number 1 on your list?
Yeah, I think so. It brings together like so many different things that I love. I would have said like I love space movies too. Interstellar, Arrival was on my Project Hail Mary. Like these are movies that I really, really, really like. But to, combine Christopher Nolan with Greek mythology and the classics, yeah, this was, I think when this was announced, I was like, he's making this specifically for me.
That's fair. And a fun fact related to Tolkien and the Odyssey is I think there was like there was some kind of anniversary magazine that popped up for the Lord of the Rings, and there was a small quote in there from Tolkien basically talking about adaptations and converting his stories into film. And he said like people would have a better chance of adapting the Odyssey. And I think he was kind of saying that in jest a little bit. And Nolan's like, hold my IMAX camera. So it's interesting. I'll try to find that quote later, put it in the group chat. But yeah, so for me, for where I rank this, for right now, I still have Interstellar on the top, but there's a chance in future viewings I am going to reshift things around. I had to deal with someone in my row going to the bathroom like multiple times throughout the movie, and I was getting annoyed. He was tripping over my big popcorn horse bucket. I was like, I was taken out of the movie a couple times, but I want to rewatch it, see where it sits, because same thing. When I came out of the theater watching Interstellar, my mind was like blown. I was confused at parts. It took me multiple viewings to fully grasp it. So this could be a similar thing for me, and I'm sure I'm going to dive into Greek mythology after talking to you more about this. So yeah, go see the Odyssey. It's worth it. Go see it in the biggest screen you possibly can. See it a couple times. Get the giant horse popcorn bucket if you can. And I don't know what you'll do with it. I have it, and I kind of regret it now because I have no space for it. But it's there. And yeah, until next time, definitely keep an eye out and subscribe, like, and all those fun things, because we have a lot of exciting things on the horizon. And over at Fellowship of Fans, Rings of Power Season 3 promotion is probably going to be gearing up as soon as next weekend or Friday when Comic-Con hits us with a potential teaser or something fun. So look out for that if that's your cup of tea. And yeah, I appreciate everyone that's been along. And until next time, let us know in the comments what we should cover. All right. Thank you all.